That won't be on the test. Well, maybe. You never can tell, right? What does sola fide mean? Come on, it's only been 4 weeks now. Sola fide. No, not good day. Faith alone. That's right. That's right. Faith alone. And that is what? Faith alone is what? How we are saved. We as the church are about sharing with the world about salvation and faith alone. We don't have to do anything to be saved. We simply have to believe to be saved. All right. Our scripture reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, the 12th chapter, verses 13 through 21. I invite you to hear the reading of God's holy word. If you would stand, please. When one of the multitude said to him, "Teacher, bid my brother divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me judge or divider over you?" And he said to them, "Take heed and beware of all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will pull down my barns, and I will build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, drink, eat, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God.'" The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So there was a lady whose husband had died, and she met a guy whose wife had died, and they began talking. You know, that's the term today, right? Talking. I don't really get it, but, you know, whatever. They began talking, and the next thing you know, they were talking about getting married. And their kids thought it was a great idea. And so they set a date, and they sent out the invitations, and it read like this: Phil, Richard, Karen, Allison, John, Matt, and Steve request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their mother and father. Because they're combining two households, they already have at least two of everything, so no gifts, please. Reception and garage sale immediately following. We laugh about that, and it is funny to some degree. For we know how easy it is to accumulate stuff. And, you know, you ride around the first visit I made after becoming your pastor was to this little lady sitting over here. Y'all know this lady? And I was talking to her on the way on the phone, and when we got up to the road to turn, I knew something on the left. Y'all know what it is? You've been up that way? There's a new storage building set up there, right? And I said to Rita, I said, you know, there's this storage place. She said, yeah, they haven't been there long. You know, they're everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. Why do we need those storage things? Because we got a lot of junk, right? I mean, my wife's got a lot of junk. I got a lot of good stuff. And I'm double in trouble now, right? But we have a lot of stuff. And it's easy to accumulate things. Jesus is teaching one day, and somebody in the crowd says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide our father's inheritance." Now, This was a battle that Jesus didn't want to get in the middle of, and we know, unfortunately, we know how difficult it can be when mom and daddy die and the estate is being divided up, and people who were once nice people all of a sudden become monsters. Siblings don't talk for years after mom and daddy die because one got something that the other thought they should get. And so Jesus says, man, who appointed me judge or arbiter between you and your brother? And then he tells them this story. Watch out. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. Because life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And the parable goes that the guy's crop had done really well. It had gotten the fertilizer it needed. It had gotten rain just when it needed. The servants had been good about weeding it, and it just made an abundance. The yield was just really great. But he had a problem. Because it was so great, because the yield was so good, he didn't have enough room in his barns to store it all. And what does he think? He doesn't think, oh, well, let me call my neighbors and share. No, he thinks, let me tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. And he does, and he gets it filled. And he thinks, I got enough. I don't have to plant for several years. I can just sit back, kick back, put my feet up, and enjoy life. But then what happens? He dies. He dies. It's an important parable. But the sad truth is so often we don't see ourselves in the story. In our eyes, we're not rich, we're not foolish, but actually we have more in common with this man than we often care to admit. There are few of us whose lives are not dominated in one way by the pervasive materialism of our age. The desire for a bigger house, a nicer car, a bigger boat, a swimming pool, a larger TV, a camper, new furniture, designer clothes, and the list goes on and on. Because it hits us where we live, it's difficult to approach the subject of materialism without the risk of folks sitting in the pews wanting to just turn off their hearing aid, right? Had a guy tell me, if you preach on something I don't want to hear, you don't turn the button anymore. You take your cell phone out and you can adjust it with your cell phone, right? And he could do that without anybody seeing that he did it. But the truth is the truth, like it or not. We know that most of the world's people do not live like we live. It bothers us, and yet, like the rich young ruler, we don't want to give up what we have. And the last thing we want on Sunday is a moralistic tirade on the sin of affluence, right? Then there's the problem that some of us may not be as affluent as it seems. My dad told me when I was young, he said, Dan, you're going to see a lot of people in new cars and new houses and new clothes. And it doesn't necessarily mean they got a lot of money. It just means they got a lot of debt. One man was asked one time, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? And he said, I'd apply it to my debt as far as it would go. Many families are in serious financial trouble today. When I do premarital counseling, I have a little sheet that I give to the couple. It's a requirement that I have. You don't have to be honest. I've only not done one wedding in 39 years almost now because the couple refused to fill it out. I don't know if you're lying to me when you fill it out or not. It asks what's your income a month, And what's your expenses a month? And it talks about how much you're going to spend on automobile maintenance, how much you're going to spend on electricity and gas and water and clothes and your wife's birthday present and Christmas gift. And if they don't put anything down there, I know they're not very in tune with what's going on, because if you don't buy your wife a birthday gift or a Christmas present, what's going to happen? You're going to wake up dead, right? Or wish you were. It's not for me. It's for them, right? Because over 50% of the marriages that end in divorce over financial reasons. There's some principles in the story of the rich fool that are critical to our lives. And like most of the stories that Jesus told, the emphasis here is on practical application. The rich fool had devoted his life to acquiring goods, but now was the time for him to die. What would happen to the goods? Where would they go? Who would get them? Who would use them? We need to see first that the tragic thing about this man's life was not his wealth, but was his lack of commitment to anything else in life. There was nothing in the world that he was so committed to as making money. All of his thoughts, his energies, his ambitions had to do with the accumulation of wealth. And now he'd come to the place where all his money, he had all the money he would ever need, but he had run out of life. What next? The tragedy of the man's life was not his abundance of wealth, but his poverty of his values. What are you committed to in your life today? Is it your family, your church, your community, making a living? What are you committed to? So if you say you're committed to your family, when's the last time that you did something for or with your family that wasn't just providing for them? When's the last time you took your spouse out? When's the last time you played a game with your children? The work will wait while you show your child the rainbow, but the rainbow will not wait while you do your work. What are the ways that you give of yourself to the things that you believe in? Secondly, it's important for each of us to have a plan by which to manage our resources. I've said that many of us have more in common with this rich fool than we thought or might care to admit. Oftentimes our problem is not money, but it's managing the money that we have. It's amazing how much money goes through our hands in a lifetime. If you have Quicken or some kind of program like that that keeps up with your money management, hopefully management, you can do a report from beginning to end and show how many millions of dollars that you've spent in the last 40 years. I did that one day, and I could not believe the amount of money that my wife had spent. My father-in-law told me before we got married, he said, "Boy, you're going to have to work 3 jobs to keep this girl in the how do you say it? You're going to have to work 3 jobs to keep her the way she's been accustomed to living," I think is the way he said it. And she's going to tell you all afterward that I'm the spender and not her. And she's right. How do we manage what we have? I'm not saying that you got to have a lot or a little. Whatever you got, you need to manage it, right? You need to take care of it. Somebody said money talks. And usually it says goodbye. My dad told me when I was a little kid, he said, Dan, if I give you money, it's going to burn a hole in your pocket. But if you get that lawnmower and you go out there and push it for 45 minutes to make $7, you're going to put that $7 in your pocket, and you're going to think twice before you pull a quarter out to buy a Coke. And you know what? He was absolutely right. What's your plan for managing what it is that you have? Somebody asked, I wonder how much that billionaire had left at his death. And the fellow said he had all of it left at his death. It would be smart to have a plan for what happens to what we leave behind. If you don't have a plan for it, Uncle Sam has a plan for it, and he's going to take most of it, if not all of it. Jesus knew that the wisdom of good management and good planning was important, and he wanted us to be good managers. Third, it's obvious that the rich fool never discovered the joy of generosity, of giving, of bringing others happiness. You know the name Rockefeller, right? And Carnegie, and Kennedy, and Vanderbilt. How about Pearson? You know the name Pearson? Daniel K. Pearson? He grew up dirt poor, worked his way through college living in an attic, eating what he could find, became a school teacher, studied medicine, then became a farmer, then started a sawmill. And he was very successful. He was blessed with a wife, and he said his wife wanted him to make money so she could give it away. And he had a great knack for making money, but he didn't keep it. He used it to help people who were struggling for an education, to provide endowments to colleges across the country. And he said, I've had more fun than any other rich man alive. He said, they're welcome to their automobiles and their yachts. I've discovered that giving is the most exquisite delight in the world, and I want to die penniless. And he did. He died a poor but happy man. And by the dawn of the 20th century, which is what year? 1900. By the dawn of 1900, Daniel K. Pearson had given away more than $6 million. Is $6 million a lot of money today in 2025? How much money? I wonder if you had $6 million 125 years ago, I wonder what it would be in today's money. I mean, that's a ton of money, right? And he gave it away. We could truly say that he laid up his treasure in heaven. Now, we'll probably never have $6 million to give away, but we can learn about the joy of generosity. There are wonderful people who need our help, and we need to give, not so much for their good as for our good. The rich fool lived for himself, and he never learned the joy of generosity. And because he didn't, he neglected his responsibilities to God. Bruce Larson, in his book, Believe and Belong, tells about a wealthy Christian businessman who was asked to come back to his church to speak to a Sunday school class, the Sunday school class that he attended when he was a child years ago. And the children were all curious about this man who had made millions And they asked him how it had begun. And he said, I remember it vividly. I remember it like it was today. He said, we had a guest preacher who came and talked to us about being faithful and devoting ourselves, committing ourselves to God. And the preacher said, give your life and all that you have to Jesus, and he will bless you. And he said, I did. That very day, I gave everything I had. He said, I had $3.54 to my name, and I gave every bit of it to the church. And God has blessed me, and I've made millions. When he finished his talk, he asked if there were any questions that any of the kids had. One of the little boys raised his hand and he said, Sir, I appreciate your story. I'm wondering if you could do it again. When $3.54 is all you have, it's pretty easy to give it to God, right? But when you got several million, it's a little different, isn't it? Perhaps that's why Jesus often warns us against the dangers of wealth. On a basis of disposable income, it ought to be easier to tithe when you make $80,000 a year than when you make $20,000 a year, right? 10% of $80,000 is what? Come on, somebody smart enough to do that math. $8,000. That leaves you 80 from 8 minus 8. 80 minus 8 leaves you what? 72,000 to live on. 2,000, 10% of that is 20. I gave you the answer. 20,000, 10% of that's 2,000. 20 minus 2 is 18. Is it easier to live on 72,000 or 18,000? Well, certainly it's easier to live on 72, right? But for whatever reason, and I don't know, but I know this is true, whatever reason, the more money we make, the harder it becomes to tithe. Somewhere along the way, our money quit serving us, and we begin to serve it. So there are 4 principles. Make sure you're committed to more than just making a living. Have a plan for managing your resources. Learn the joy of generosity. When you're making your plan, begin that plan with your responsibilities to God. For what does it profit one if we gain the whole world but lose our soul? Would you turn